Hi everyone, welcome to Live, Love, and Lava. Today we're going to work with our DIY bracelet kit. So in your kit, you're going to get the leather, the coordinating thread, a button, a shank button, or something else that's easy to work with, and your choice of stone. So today I'm working with rhodonite. So a couple of materials that you're going to need before you get started are these great little bulldog clips, and something to attach your project to. So I am using my favorite fabric tray. This one is 8.5 by 11 and it's about 2 inches deep, which is nice. It allows your hands to work underneath your project. So we're going to get started and load our attach our project to our tray. I'm going to show you how to do that. So for those of you that have never done this before, I'm going to show you the easy way to attach your thread. So this makes the first couple of macrame stitches a lot easier. So I'm going to throw my thread inside the button, and I'm going to put the leather inside as well. The button loops tend to be a little snug, so it's usually easier to put your thread in first. So we're going to attach the button side first. We're not going to worry too much about that thread. And it is knotting up on me. So I don't know if you guys saw that knot, but this is a good opportunity for me to show you how to unknot it. It's not an actual knot, it just typically are loops that get caught together. I don't know if you can see that. It's not a knot. So if that happens, just go slow. And there is some tension in this thread, which is great to be able to use it to put into your stones. Also good when it comes to those knots that you can kind of push them apart. Okay, so to attach that button to the top, you can see that I've just captured the top half of that button, but I can still see the loop and where the leather and thread are coming out. So that's on one side, and then on the other side, I'm going to make sure that my ends of my leather are matched up. You don't want one side longer than the other when it comes to the thread or the leather. So I'm going to attach the other side of the leather to the other side of the tray. So you can see that there you can go loose or you can go snug. And what I want you to try to do is go as snug as you can without popping that button out. Now if that button does pop out, just reattach it and go as tight as you can without popping it out. Okay, so now the next step is we need to find the center of our thread. So I'm just going to gather these ends together. It doesn't have to be exact. And then pull that thread down. Okay. Now, this is the tricky part. I have another video that shows these macrame stitches up close if this is too hard to see in this video. So what we're going to do is a series of P's and Q's. So a P is the right hand side of your thread pulled into a loop. So I have my loop on the right hand side. My left hand thread is going to sit over top of the right hand thread. Now the left hand side is going to go over top the right thread, under the leather, and through that loop and pull out the other side. So this first stitch, I don't want you to tighten it because it will just disappear into that hole. So we're just going to leave that loosey-goosey. You kind of see all that thread is just sitting there. It looks like a pretzel. That's exactly what you want. Let's see if I can get actually a little bit closer. Okay, so now we're going to do the Q. So we did the P, which was the loop on the right hand side. Now the loop is on the left. So I've got my thread. I'm going to loop it on the left hand side. My right hand thread is going to go over the tail of the left, under the leather, and through the loop. So where these are crossing over, I'm just going to hold that so it doesn't rip apart my first knot. So now I have 2 pretzels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten the first knot with my second, the strings of my second, and just go slow. And you want that first set of knots close to the knot or close to your button loop, but not too close, or else it will just slide right back up into that loop. So that's about far enough. If you can get a little, snug it a little bit closer, you can try and do that. There we go. That spacing right there is great. If it doesn't look exactly like mine, that's okay too. So we've done a P and a Q. Now we're going to do another P. So the loop is on the right. I'm going to have to zoom out just a little bit more. The loop is on the right. The left hand tail, the opposite tail, is going to go over top of the right hand, under the leather, and through that loop. And we're going to just snug that up. Now we're going to go to the other side. The loop is on the left. The thread is going over top of the leather. My right hand thread is going to go over top of the left hand thread, under the leather, and through the loop. We'll tighten that up. So we have done 4 stitches, and we're going to go for 8 today. So we've got the P, loop is on the right, left hand thread goes over top of the right hand tail, under the leather, and through the loop. We'll do another Q. The loop is on the left. Right hand thread comes over the tail of the left hand, under the leather, and through the loop. And pull snug. So when you're making these stitches, sometimes the phone will ring, the dog will bark, something will happen, and you've got to walk away from your project. So I just wanted to show you, now that we have a couple of stitches going, what or how you can easily tell if you need to make the loop on the left or on the right. So if you see on this side, the thread is coming out from underneath, or there is no, let's just call it a bump. On this side, you can see there's a bump right there. Wherever that bump is, that's where you need to make your next loop. So you can see if you go up just a little bit, the bump is just a little bit further up on this side. So by counting those bumps, or by counting the threads that are in the center, that's how you can also determine how many stitches you've made, if you need to count stitches. And in some projects it's important. If you're needing to do 20 stitches and you walk away in the middle, it's handy to know how to count those stitches. Okay, so we're going to do one more set. So we'll do a P. Our bump is on the right, so now we know our loop needs to be on the right. So we'll make the loop on the right. Our left hand thread comes over the right side, under the leather, and through the loop. There we go. And a Q. The loop is on the left. The right hand thread comes over the tail, under the leather, and through the loop. All right, that was the toughest part. So if you're still with me, congratulations. If you had to stop and take a look at it a gazillion times, that's okay too. I certainly had to when I was first learning. I do have another video that shows you how to do these first stitches, and it's using much larger materials, so it is a lot easier to see how I did those macrame stitches. So now we're going to switch to a ladder stitch to start adding the stones. So your thread should be coming out of both sides of your project on the side. They shouldn't be coming out the top or the bottom, but evenly on the sides. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take both sides of our thread and we're going to put them in through the middle. We're going to go underneath and up through the middle. So I did that on the right side, and I pulled that thread back through the right side. My left hand thread is going to go under and through the middle, and I'm going to pull it back to the left hand side. And when you pull it, there should be no X in the middle. Do you see how the thread is holding on? It is attaching to each side of the leather. So the right is staying to the right, left is staying to the left. With the first stone only, or the first bead, however your project is, you want to make that loop 2 times. So now we're going to take our right thread, go around, under, and up through the middle. Left hand side, around the leather, underneath and up through the leather. And again, when I pull tight, you can see that that thread is secured to the leather and there's no X in the middle. That X in the middle tells you that something has gone wrong. So now our thread is coming up through the center of the leather, and we can add our first stone. So find the ends, or the first end. So I'm starting on the left hand side. So I'm going to put one side of my thread through the stone. I have the other side of my thread, and I'm going to put it in to the other side. What you want those strings to, or the thread to do, is to crisscross in the middle. So now I have a thread coming out of both sides of the stone, if that makes sense. And when I pull, you can see that both my threads stayed on the side that they started on, or that I should say there's no X in the middle. The thread isn't crossing over. All you can see is the stone, and now the thread is coming out evenly on both sides. If your thread is coming out the very top, or both threads are coming out the bottom, you put both sides of your thread through the same hole. And what you want to do is put one thread through one side and the other thread through the other side. So your threads are going to cross directions inside your stone. You can also see how that stone is just sitting there just fine. But when we're first starting, if you just take that stone and just push them up just a little bit, and then tighten your thread. Oh, do you see how he fell out? No problem. Just give your thread a little tighten and push your stone up from underneath. All that happened was it needs to be evenly placed between those between the sides of your leather. So if he's too far up or too far down, he'll just fall out. So now our little stone is happy. He's sitting there. If yours does not want to stay, try adding one more stone. So now we're going to wrap our thread around our leather. We do this before every single stone, otherwise your stone is only attached to the thread. We want the thread to be attached to the leather and then attached to the stone. So the right hand side is going to go under, it's going to go wrap around that leg of leather up through the middle. The right hand side will stay to the right hand side, and the left hand side will stay to the left hand side. So you can see my thread is looped. This is a very important step. If you miss one side, your stone will not look right. It's up to you whether or not you want to go back and fix it, but it will look different. So now I've got my left hand thread. I'm going to go through the stone, and I'm going to take my right hand thread and I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So there is a good picture of how you want that to look. So the left hand side went through one side and the right hand side went through the opposite side. Grab just your ends, give it a tug, and when you get when you tighten it all the way, you don't want it to be touching. You want there to be just a tiny bit of space. So you can just take that and move that down. The reason you want it to have some space is once we get all of our stones added, if they're super tight, your bracelet won't be able to go around in a circle. Those stones will pop up or down. They won't be able to stay in between the leather. So by giving them just a little bit of space, they can move in a circle. Okay, so I'm taking my thread, wrapping it around the leather, around the outside, and coming up through the middle from the bottom and staying on the same side that it started on. So I picked up another stone. The left hand side goes through one side of the stone, the right hand side of the leather goes through the other side. So this thread that I'm using is called Micro Ceylon, and it has a little bit of strength to it. So you don't need needles to make this project. So I'm going to tighten that up. And again, you can see there's just a hair of a space. If you get going and you tighten it too much, I can show you how to loosen up those stones towards the end. Okay, so we wrapped our thread around the outside of the leather up through the center, and we're going to feed it onto another stone. Kind of new to the whole YouTube channel, video making talented arena. So this is probably take 27 for me today, and I am going to be forever grateful for your patience and understanding. I have teenagers. I maybe should have asked them to make the video for me. Okay, so the thread goes around the outside, up through the middle, and we're just adding those stones. Trying to keep the camera nice and close so you can see what I'm doing. So if I were to like super duper tighten that up and make it so there's no space, I can always come back, and if you spin them, just give them a little bit of a twist, you can add that space back in. So you can always just double check every couple of stones how you're making out with that. The thread goes around the outside, and up through the middle. Sometimes finding the hole of your stone can also be tricky. And sometimes you will find that the holes are not very big. So even though this is a super tiny thread, sometimes they don't make the holes very big. So in that instant, so my thread went from the left to the right, and if you take your thread, hold it, I kind of have it tight back here, and pinch it and push that stone up, and then what you're going to end up doing is making that hole as big as possible, and you're going to pull that first thread down, making room for the second thread. So if you order picture jasper, that one is a famous culprit for having stones too small, not sure why. Okay, so we are making some progress. I am just going to keep you guys with me right until the very end, and I will show you how I finish it as well. Feel free to pause the video and come back. We have a little bit of spacing between each stone. And if you find your thread is falling out, give a good yank and get most of it through before you add the other side. So I am just going to show you what it looks like when I don't alternate sides of putting the thread through the stone. So let's say I'm watching TV, I forget what I'm doing, and I've got that thread going through that side, and instead of going this way, the way I'm supposed to do it, I'm going to put them both through the same hole, it going in the same direction. And you see how different that looks. Now I can see my thread. So you shouldn't ever be able to see your thread other than it being wrapped around the leather, but I can very clearly see the thread between these two stones. So that's what's happened. So in that case, I'm going to slide that stone out, and I'm going to pull out one side of my thread, and I know that my thread, or that my stone is going to sit like this. I can tell by the way that, now that I'm up close to the leather, I can tell that that's how it's going to sit. So I know that my thread needs to go back the other way so it can hold it nice and flat and even. So take your thread around the leather, up through the center, grab another stone, so almost anything is fixable. If you notice that you did something wrong 6 stones ago, it'll just take you a few minutes to undo it and go back and start it again. So now I'm going to show you another mistake. So we're going to only put one side of the thread around the leather. Okay, so this side I'm going to forget. Okay, so here we go. Put the thread through one side and through the other, And I'll just show you what that looks like. We're going to pull it. Do you see how that looks different? This side is not connected to the leather, so it will not sit nice. So what you have to do is take the thread out that isn't connected to the leather, wrap it around the leather, and we'll try that again. Okay, so take that thread, wrap it around the leather, bring it up through the center, add another stone, get the thread going through both sides of your stone and tighten it. Just going to loosen that guy up a little bit. Your thread around the outside, up through the middle. I'm going to add another stone. So these bracelet kits come in a variety of options. You can really have an endless selection. I have close to 50 different kinds of stones, but the ones on the website are the ones that I have the most quantity available. So if you have a favorite stone and you don't see it listed, feel free to email me, and if I have it available, I will certainly send it to you. And if I don't have it in stock, I will see if I can get it for you. The nice thing about these bracelets is you can wear many of them at once. So if you have more than one favorite, you can come back and order more. This is a great gift idea to give to a crafty person. And because it comes with, or the video is available for anyone to watch, anyone can learn how. The video is available too if you find your own supplies. I don't ship partial kits. But everything is included in the kit, other than those bulldog clips and your project tray. And like I said, your project tray could also be a clipboard, and I will make another super quick video and show you how to attach your project to a clipboard. There is a reason why you want to attach it to something and not just have it loose or not attached to something. Some people have put the button around a nail or something like that just to hold it steady, and they have just completed the bracelet with it only attached at one end. And the problem with that is your leather, if your leather isn't snug, your beads aren't going to lay flat in the ladder formation that you see in the video. And that can lead to problems with it causing stress on the leather, because now the thread has to be tight on one side and not the other. You will just find that your bracelet can be all wavy and wonky. Okay, so we're just going to make sure we got enough space all the way down. I'm going to come up just a little bit here so you can see some of them are a little bit tighter than I'd like, so I'm just going to go and add that space in. And that space looks like lots right now, but guaranteed when you're wearing it, you will not notice. Okay, so the first part was tricky. You got through that. So this next part is similar. And now that we have those macrame stitches down pat, just this transitioning from the ladder stitch back to macrame can be a little tricky. So what you're going to do is wrap around your leather up through the center one more time. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take your thread and you're going to swap sides under the leather. So you can see that the thread makes an X, but it's under the leather. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a macrame stitch. So it's a little tricky because your thread is coming from opposite sides. So we're going to do the P first. So I'm going to pull the right hand side, make that loop. My left hand thread is going to go over the tail of the right hand thread, under the leather, and through that loop on the right hand side. So it is helpful to kind of hold that X in place. And what you want to do is, I'll just sometimes put I always put my finger underneath and just kind of hold those threads from loosening. You can use all your fingers for this one. And then just tighten slowly, because you want that loop on the left-hand side of your thread, or left-hand side of your leather. Do you see it kind of popped open? And my thread went shooting that way. So I'm going to come back under, I'm going to grab him and gently tug him until that loop comes back. And I'm not going to tighten too much. I'm going to just actually leave that stitch. Where's my camera? Oh, so sorry. Okay, so that's how it looks right now. Can't see anything as to what it's supposed to look like. Doesn't really look like the pretzel, doesn't look like a macrame stitch. But trust that you're doing it right. So it's kind of in place. So now I'm going to make the Q. My loop is on my left, and I'm just being careful not to tighten this. I'm just working with the tail here. So the right hand side is going to come over the tail of the left, under the leather, and through the loop. And this is where my threads cross. That's where I'm going to hold. So now I have two stitches, and that's kind of the magic with macrame, is this particular thread is a knotting cord. It is designed to latch onto itself to make those knots stay secure. So I'm going to tighten that first one. I'm going to hold it and then slowly tighten that second stitch. And now that I have that second stitch to anchor, bloop, now it's good. Now it'll stay snug. So we made 8 stitches up here. We're going to go ahead and do 8 stitches down here. We already did 2, so we're going to do another 3 sets. So we'll do a P, loopers on the right, under the leather, through the loop, loop on the left, the tail goes over, under the leather, through the loop, halfway, stitch 5, 6 is the cue. Got number 7 and number 8. You did it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to finish off the bracelet without any extra tools. When I am making these bracelets, I use my thread zapper, and what this guy does is you push the button and this gets super hot and it will melt the knots of your thread, or melt the extra string of your thread, so it won't come unknotted. So this is the finished project. It's absolutely gorgeous. So to finish this off, now what we're going to do is we're going to knot the thread and the leather together. So grasping all 4 things, I like to wrap it around 2 fingers, keeping my thread and my leather grouped together. We're just going to make that knot. Now the thread is going to want to pull differently than the leather, so just go slow. And before we tighten too much, I'm just going to snug up the thread a little bit. Okay, so we want that knot to sit at the bottom of our threads. Now this leather is genuine leather, and it is a tiny diameter, 1.5 millimeters, which means it's plenty strong to stay on your wrist and hold these stones together and be buttoned and unbuttoned. But tightening the knots, you can easily snap it by just tugging on one too hard. So just give it a good tug, but don't pull too hard. You should feel that that knot is tightening. I like to hold it between my fingers and just feel it tightening. And you can kind of feel when you're at the end, it won't tighten anymore. And because we have that thread in there, I want you to give your threads each a good tighten. Okay, so there is our knot and our threads. So when you're cutting your threads, you want to cut them close to the knot, but you don't have to cut them all the way. So our knot, these macrame stitches are technically knots. And because we have captured that thread into our leather, that thread will be just fine. Now, if you're overly cautious, I have, you can always take any kind of glue, like a craft glue would work just fine, and just the tiniest bit where the thread is coming out, we're just going to add that in there. I don't know if you can see that, it is barely even wet. And just to keep that there. Okay, so we've made the first knot. Now our second knot is just the leather. So we're going to loop it around again. And before we tighten it too far, we're going to make sure our button will fit through. So you want to make sure you're holding your button in between your knots and just kind of size it up. Just to be extra sure, I am going to see if I can get that button in. It is snug, so I can pull apart, and something with the knots is you kind of can tug from both directions. tugging it a little bit harder in the direction that you want it to go, bigger or smaller. Okay, so now that's going to fit just fine. I really like this flower button because it does just really hold on to that leather. It's not going to slip away on you. Okay, so in these kits, I give you plenty of leather. So go ahead and make another loop. Before we get too far with the tightening, we're going to make sure that our button is going to fit. Pulling snugly, but not too hard. Okay, our button's going to fit just fine. If you'd like, you can make a third loop. There may be room for that. Okay, and there we go. So I'm just going to tighten that leather up from both sides. And for the finishing touch, cutting those ends off, I like to just make them a little bit decorative and go at an angle, and there you go. So now, how do you put it on? Let's just zoom out here a little bit. I'll take the button, holding it at as close to my wrist as I can with my fingers, and loop it around my wrist. Oh, and I dropped it. And fit that button in between. And then just work it up. And then turn the button so it'll lay flat. And so there you go. That is 20 6mm stones. And my wrist is just under 7 inches. And I'm on the first button loop. So if your wrist is quite a bit larger, you might want to use the second loop. Having additional loops is really handy if some people like to wear it on their ankle, or if it's a gift, it's nice to have those options. In the wintertime, if you want to put your bracelet over top of the cuff of your sweater, you have that option as well. And I always just tuck those extra knots underneath my bracelet anyway, and it is just fine. And there you guys go. You have made a leather wrap bracelet all by yourselves. Feel free to share pictures of your creations on my Facebook page. I would love, 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 love to see what you created and what your combination was. Thanks, guys. See you next time.